El Día de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, is a celebration that provides people of Mexican ancestry with a way to embrace the beauty of life while honoring the spirits of the dead. The ritual, involving the building of altars containing ofrendas or offerings to the departed, takes place each year at midnight, October 31st, continuing through November 2nd. Its origins are rich and complex due to the incorporation of Spanish Catholicism into an ancient Mesoamerican tradition, and it can mean different things to different people.
If you can understand the Day of the Dead, you really understand something that is special about Mexican culture, and I think it's one of the greatest gifts that Mexicans have to give the rest of the world.
For me, Day of the Dead was actually something that I encountered here in the United States. I was born in Mexico and came here as a child, but I actually learned about it here in the school system, and actually by visiting this museum when I was younger.
One of the other amazing things about the tradition of Day of the Dead is how it passes on to the next generations their ideas and their own personal history.
What it does is it gets me in touch with traditions and my culture that I grew up with. And it also is a really wonderful tradition in general because it puts us in touch with my ancestors and relatives that have gone away. It gives me a way to honor them every year.
When you're creating the altar or the ofrenda and the children are around and you're placing the foods that those people love to eat and you're putting their photographs up and all the things that remind you of them, all their stories come out. And so you start hearing about your uncle who played the guitar so well, or about your aunt who was a risk taker. And ultimately what happens is they do come back, because as we're talking about them and discussing their lives, they're present again. And I think it really gives the children, the next generation who maybe didn't get to know grandma or grandpa, they hear those stories, and I think that oftentimes they get to see themselves. It's just beautiful when you can pass on to the next generation the family stories in such a way that they see the connection to themselves.
Day of the Dead is celebrated differently in different parts of Mexico. Each year, the National Museum of Mexican Art in Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood celebrates with a special exhibit. Past exhibits have included Hanal Fikshan, a tribute to the holiday's Mayan roots, Cien Años de Posada y su Catrina, in honor of the artist José Guadalupe Posado, as well as Rito y Recuerdo.
Cuando se abren las puertas,
when you open the door on opening day, I see so many people who have come to see the altar and artwork. Some people are from Mexico, and it makes them remember when they used to go to the cemeteries, or the moments their families put up their altars or ofrendas for their loved ones. Other people who come for the first time learn about Day of the Dead and learn about different cultures. It's all very important to see their expressions and to see how they are beginning to know different cultures, or remembering their homes, or the person they loved who is not here. This is one of the most important things.
Culturas diferentes, o simplemente el recordar su pueblo, o el recordar a la gente que uno quiso y que ya no está acá. Eso es una de las cosas más importantes.
Months of preparation go into the design and installation of the exhibit.
The pieces that we're going to be preparing today are two-dimensional pieces that need to be matted and framed. We have many pieces that we'll be preparing for this year's Day of the Dead, over 40 pieces from the permanent collection. A number of them are two-dimensional, which is what we're working with today. And then later on we'll be working with some three-dimensional pieces, sizing them up for pedestals and vitrines and risers, things to keep them on exhibit for roughly 2.5 months and keep them safe.
Through collaboration with local artists, the Chicago Mexican American community, and educational institutions, the altars are constructed on-site in the days leading up to the opening.
We always invite people from different parts of Mexico or the United States to come and install ofrendas. We're always looking for that very special folk art piece that really exemplifies the best of the tradition.
Local Chicago public school students participate in the exhibit each year by creating an altar that touches on something meaningful to them. And in 2012, the museum invited the winners of an annual competition held by the Autonomous University of the Yucatan to reconstruct their award-winning Mayan altar to be included in that year's exhibit.
The local artists, as well as the artists in Mexico, they always have something beautiful to show that really ties in with concepts of cycle of life, life and death, and loss. All those universal sort of ideas that every human being will at one point or another experience.
The ancient Maya believed that the soul regularly traveled between Earth and the underworld. During the season of Hanal-Pikshan in November, it is believed that these souls come back to Earth to visit their earthly homes. Because of this belief, the Maya went to many lengths to prepare a proper welcome for the souls of their deceased loved ones. The main tradition is to create an altar of offerings to the deceased to make their visit pleasant.
We come here representing the Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán, our Mayan language, and the state to show you this, which is a Mayan altar. What we can see here is how the construction was started on this hut, which we call a Mayan house. It's made of sticks that are fastened together. We can see that it's not made by drilling or any other specific way. Rather, it's all tied together. So we started building the hut, which was made in the form of a Mayan house, which is what we wanted to convey to everyone.
Day of the Dead is something that has inspired artists and artisans alike. Each year, the exhibit includes examples of the most traditional as well as the most conceptual work inspired by themes of death and mortality.
After about a year of researching the database of our collections and looking at all of the pieces that are about Day of the Dead, we are able to, bit by bit, narrow down our general selection to a final selection, in which all of the pieces focus around the story that I want to tell.
There are many important works of art and installations that make up the finished exhibit. The Linares family has a long tradition of creating art representative of Day of the Dead themes. The Ricardo Linares skulls give us a look into how the skeleton is portrayed in art. Don Pedro Linares, Ricardo's grandfather, originally created the alebrijes in the 1930s. The skulls demonstrate common fears about death and the afterlife. Although they appear frightening, they are also very humorous. Don Pedro's sons, Felipe and Miguel Linares, continue exploring these themes. Their skeletal figures are shown participating in Day of the Dead processions and cemetery visits. The museum has chosen, at times, to pay special tribute within the Day of the Dead exhibit to artists who have significantly impacted the Mexican-American community. This room contains an altar and a collection of artwork dedicated to the life of Francisco Mendoza.
Francisco Mendoza was a local arts educator here in Pilsen, and he worked here for years doing public artwork, working with students, and he recently passed away. And so what was done was a group of artists that he knew over time, who were also his students, gathered together and produced artwork in honor of him. The artwork is very personal. It really shows the relationship that the artist had with Mr. Mendoza, and it's very touching and intimate to see that relationship that existing. There's a lot of love there.
He is most known for some of the mosaic murals that are located throughout the neighborhoods, including those at Orozco and Cooper schools and the 18th Street train station. Beyond his contributions, Mr. Mendoza also had a larger-than-life personality that made him a colorful character and important member of the community. The altar contains elements that were important to Mr. Mendoza's life. The main image at its center is the symbol he used to sign his artwork, which also looks like his silhouette. The background of the profile is a collection of photographs of Mr. Mendoza with his friends and family. Some items to note on the altar are the trumpet, which he used to play for fun around his students, a pair of boots that represented his love of boots, a palette and brushes to represent his art making, white calla lilies, in Spanish alcatraces, which were his favorite flower, and also represented his love for the work of Diego Rivera. This altar contains the basic elements of personal Day of the Dead altars. Candles representing the element of fire, water, flowers representing earth, and papel picado, usually representing wind. The final room of the exhibition includes works by some contemporary and folk artists. Through this exhibit and others like it, the National Museum of Mexican Art is able to help Mexican-American residents of Pilsen, Chicago, and beyond maintain an ongoing connection with their heritage, while also sharing the richness and beauty of Mexican art and culture with those who might not be exposed anywhere else.
Probably the most exciting thing about Day of the Dead is that it is actually not about death, but it's more about life and remembering. And I think that it's really a special time that we have every year when we can think and talk about those people who are no longer physically with us, but yet they are present in our families, in our homes, and in everyday life. I think it's a wonderful time when we can sort of meditate on what has passed and transpired, and of course, ultimately think about our own end. And I think that the Day of the Dead gives people a special opportunity to think about something that you might not normally think about except when at a wake or at a funeral. And thinking about death, meditating on death, does give you a beautiful and new perspective on life.
The celebration of Day of the Dead reflects the values of those who celebrate it, specifically the importance of remembering lost loved ones. In the words of Octavio Paz, the word death is not pronounced in New York, in Paris, in London, because it burns the lips. The Mexican, in contrast, is familiar with death, jokes about it, caresses it. It is one of his favorite toys and most steadfast love.
Mucho que te quiero más,